really cool episode, actually. The amount of talent that we've got on this screen right now coming out of your screens is incredible. We've got Paul Farah, David Lowe, and Nainita Desai, and I'm very blessed to know these guys from the Ivors Academy. That's another good reason why you should join the Ivors Academy.
Join the Ivors Academy.
Join. Academy.
Yeah.
But guys, I mean, tell me a little bit about how this all started. Who should we go first? Oh, ladies first, of course. Nainita, did you like play instruments as a child? What's your story? Were you
I did.
Cool?
I did. I was immersed in music. I played. I really benefited from free music lessons at school. So I took up the violin and the piano, and I did a few grades of that at primary school, going into secondary school, and then I was forced to play the Indian classical sitar and tablas at home. So I used to come home with really bleeding fingers. I did a couple of years of that, and actually I wish it was a very good discipline, and I wish I'd carried on. But into my teenage years, I had bands at school. I wanted to be a singer. I had my own pop and rock bands. I just loved music, all styles of music. I sang in choirs, and then through various reasons, I wanted to study music, but I couldn't. There were various restrictions at school, so I couldn't do GCSE music, for example, or A-level music. So I ended up doing a degree in mathematics, which I love. I love numbers.
Very impressed.
That was good. And then I did a postgrad in music technology, music information technology. So what happened was Peter Gabriel came to the university, and I had to stand in a row and show the great Peter what I was doing, writing a bit of music software, the early days of MIDI. And he said, look me up when you finish university. What you're doing is really interesting. And of course I didn't, because I then went into doing sound design for feature films, because I love sound. I think like Paul and David, I had my 4-track multi-track recorder, and I'd experiment with recording at home and, overdubbing, and, I had 4 tracks. And so I got into synths and buying my first synth, which was a Roland D70 and a Roland R8 drum machine. And then, so I got into sound design and recording sounds, worked on feature film, big movies for a couple of years. And I was working in Germany for about a year, working on some films in the outskirts of Munich. And I got terribly homesick, and I thought, I cannot spend the rest of my life here. I want to go back to the buzz of London. I came back to London out of work, and I remembered what Peter said, and I wrote a letter to Real World Studios. He's got this amazing recording complex in just outside Bath. And I got a reply back and said, come and see us. So I did, and they offered me a job then and there, saying, would you like to be Peter's assistant music engineer? Ooh. So then that led into my path into the music industry, working on other people's music, working with great record producers, engineers, musicians. And then I met a music supervisor who said, I know you want to write music for film and TV, because I love film and I love music, and I love the combination of the power of those two in storytelling. And then I got offered a job writing music for a Channel 4 travel show. And that was it. And that was 20 years ago.
Nainita, that's absolutely fantastic. So I didn't even know that about you. This is what I love about doing these shows. I'm finding out so much info. So how many years after was it that you contacted Peter Gabriel and he remembered you?
About 2.5 years. Oh. And he remembered me, which was really, really lovely.
What albums was he doing at the time that you...
Yeah, I was curious about that.
I worked on it was 91, 92, I worked at the Real World Recording Week sessions. So I got to work with Daniel Lanois and Nigel Kennedy and...
Wow.
Who's the Irish singer?
Daniel O'Connell. Daniel
female...
Sinead O'Connor.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I just got to work with a load of people, but he was doing, I think he was doing Us at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
What incredible, that's an incredible story. Go on, David, beat that, Mr. Lowe.
It's hard to beat. That is hard to beat, isn't it, really? But I didn't study music when I was a kid or anything, and I had a few piano lessons when I was about 7 with this piano teacher with halitosis, and it really just put me off totally. You know, going into this little tiny dark room, and there's this really weird woman sitting behind me, like, and I was sitting there, and all I could, it was just horrible. So it sort of put me off having piano lessons, you know,
Face right now.
and plus I couldn't practice it, you know, like I was, like we all are, just practicing was just, yeah. So I really didn't have any musical training at all, but I always used to have little tunes going on in my head all the time, you know, so which I didn't really even think was special or anything or whatever. It was just felt normal to be constantly thinking of little tunes all the time. And but my main sort of like passion really was to get into broadcasting and TV and radio, and sort of, I love the behind the scenes thing of theatre and telly and radio and stuff. And I was really lucky. It all crystallized later on in school, and a teacher gave us a talk about working at the BBC in local radio, and as a careers talk. And I literally it was one of those lessons that was optional, you didn't have to go, and I just happened to go along that time, and he gave us this sort of, just like, if it wasn't for that I probably wouldn't be sitting here now, because afterwards I just said, oh, I'd just really love to do that. And he said, well, as it happens, they have people helping out at the weekend, guys your age going in to help out. So I give the guy a ring, and he took me down to his office, phoned up the producer there and then, and he said, yeah, send him in on Saturday. You know, so I went up to, I'll show you a picture actually. I went to Pebble Mill in, it was at Pebble Mill in Birmingham at the BBC, and so, and I didn't, you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do at the BBC, but it was just literally, I walked in that door and I just thought, oh my God, this is it. This is just perfect. And as it happened, it was a show that was made by young people. The idea was that young people made the radio show, so I got to be doing that. Can you see?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I bet I wish that I could play with all those gadgets.
Only every week it was a live show, and we ended up like running the, you know, like driving the show, they used to call it, and spinning all the records in and putting the, you know, doing the whole thing. And in fact, he sort of ended up like virtually producing the show. You could choose the records and you go out and do items. So it was great, you know. And that got me really, like Nainita, that got me into sort of sound and using sound and audio. And I used to love just spending hours in the studio sort of making jingles and stuff like that. And also got me into the sort of TV radio mentality and about durations and going and voiceovers and the whole thing, you know, learning about the sort of culture of broadcasting and stuff. And so that was my sort of foothold really. And then music just happened, like Nainita, I was like really into synthesizers and all that, and it was all becoming more accessible. And then we used to go and hang around the music shops on a Saturday, like, you know, playing all these really ridiculously expensive synths, going, oh my God, listen to the string set on that. And then lo and behold, you know, Roland brought out the Juno 6, which was like the first almost affordable polyphonic synth, even before MIDI. And I've still got mine.
You got it
somewhere or other. It's that way, isn't it? I've got the thing twisted around. There it is. Ta-da! Up there. And so that's not the original one. I just bought one a few years ago just to have it again, and literally got it out of the box. And from that moment, I haven't actually stopped writing music. You know, I just got it out of the box, plonked it on the thing, plugged it in, started playing, and literally pretty much every day, since, apart from whatever holidays, I've been making music. You know, and
it's interesting you're saying that, because I think with creatives there is an instinctive drive to just
do it.
It's not like an option.
Totally. And we said earlier on that in a way we were quite lucky, I'd say, because we got in right at the beginning of the home recording thing, so we've learnt from the ground up about sort of recording and doing it ourselves, you know, which is, for people like us, you are literally a one-man band. You have to know, and it's not only creative, but it's technical as well. You have to know about sort of what level things have to be at and how long they have to be and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of technical information that you have to know. And
definitely share some of that a little later.
Yeah,
for sure. You know, David, you've reminded me of such a a lovely memory because I haven't thought about this for years. I used to go to music shops.
Yeah.
Back in the day when there were like shops on the high street with loads of gear, and I
Yeah.
used to play the keyboards,
Absolutely.
try the microphones out, you know, because
There's always some guy in the corner. There's always some guy in the guitar playing "Stairway to Heaven" in the corner, you know.
Yeah. Remember in shops, there used to be a list. You couldn't play "Stairway to Heaven." I think it was "We Will Rock You." There were a few songs that were like banned. But oh, that's such a gosh! I haven't thought about that for years. Something beginning with K in London. There was a huge music shop.
There was Turnkey, wasn't there?
Turnkey, yeah.
I used to spend hours in Turnkey,
Yeah.
and well, you know, I really miss Denmark Street and all the, you know, Rose Morris and.
That's right. Yeah. Well, there's still a few left down there, aren't there? Down Denmark Street.
I think a handful of guitar shops. Aren't
Not
there?
everything modern and change is good, isn't it?
Yeah. So I got into writing music for telly because it wasn't what I planned to do, but because I was doing music and working in TV at the time, and then literally like a chance chat to this guy in the bar one night at the BBC after work, and he said, "Oh, you've got one of those synths, haven't you? I'm after some music. Do you fancy having a go for me?" And I went, yeah. And it was for our local news show, you know, like Midlands Today in the Midlands. And so I did this tune, and they said, yeah, we'll take that. And again, in a way, it was before the day of everything nowadays, everything has to be signed off, like from one level to the next, you know, the producers, and then there's a lot of signing off these days. Whereas then it was much more, if they wanted it, that was it. You know, they just used it. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thing. We're really talking about a lot of chance and a lot of luck and a lot of circumstances, but that are made, that we kind of opportunities that we kind of can make open.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that what I've noticed now, because I talk to lots of students and people, and you know, I get emails saying, how do I get into the music business? Because it doesn't seem like at college they teach you about the technical side, but they don't teach you about the industry and how to get in and where to go next and stuff, and what's there. It seems like. So I get lots of emails saying, how do you get into the industry? And
definitely touch on that in a bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, but it's just literally, I mean, we will talk about it more, but it's grabbing opportunities and really, like, it's so easy to let things go, you know, and people say, oh, I really must do that. And then the next day they've forgotten about it. But it's basically like grabbing it as soon as you hanging on to it.
100% agree with you. I literally, because I obviously, you know, I work in the pop environment, but I've spun into doing media with our mutual friend, Mark Sylvan, who's been on the show. Obviously, we've done a couple of 3 TV shows now. And but if I hadn't gone to the Ivors Academy, media, which Kathy hosted,
everybody join the Academy.
I would not have met the BBC. I met the BBC, and through that, I because I've been writing a television show, and through that now I've got to meet LA Productions for Disney and Lucasfilms.
Yeah, wow.
It just shows you that you've got to take opportunities and grab them. Paul.
Hello.
Tell us your story and your grabbing opportunities.
Well, I had a very musical upbringing. My dad's very musical. I sang in Bristol Cathedral Choir when I was a little choir boy. And that was an amazing experience because obviously I was exposed to tons and tons of really ancient music and sort of learned about harmony and all those sort of things, singing the Sunday service. But also I got exposed to orchestras because every so often they'd have a big orchestral performance and there'd be the choir behind. So at the age of 10, I was sitting, you know, literally in the percussion section of the Liverpool Philharmonic or something. It's a really impressionable, amazing experience, you know, having Carmina Burana with the orchestral bass drum, you know, being 2 feet from you. So, and because I had piano lessons, I didn't really take to piano lessons very well because I'm quite fiercely dyslexic. So I kind of like I think like the other guys, I was just really fascinated by synthesizers and making noises and tape machines and drum machines. And I didn't have any money at all. So whatever you could get your hand on, we used to borrow some bits from school and little basic samplers in the early days. And then when I was 16, I got a job in a local recording studio on a YTS apprenticeship scheme. And it was literally just, you know, plugging in cables and staying up late with rock bands and just, you know, the absolute lowest of the low, T-boy basically. But what surprised me was that I assumed everyone in that environment would know about music, that they would know about Tchaikovsky, that they would know about how to turn a major chord to a minor chord. And they didn't. None of them did. They were all technical people. So whenever any job came in that required like a little jingle to do, or we need this little thing arranging, whatever, they'd just give it to me because I'd be there. Oh, I can do this with my little tiny sequencer. And then I ended up just doing that. And I was doing that really since I was about 16 or 17. And then I went freelance, probably when I was about 19. And just sort of went from there, a bit like Dave. Did some stuff for radio and did some sort of library music, and then sort of you just sort of the important thing is the hunger that you have really for it. That sort of, and this is the biggest mistake that most people make, is that you get all the time. I'm sure the other guys will confirm this. The biggest mistake that people make in this particular bit of the industry, and it's a very strange, very niche little bit of the industry, is that they actually don't really want to do it at all. They view media music as something that, well, I can do. I mean, I like films and I make music, so surely I can just get into TV music. And it really screws you, because you have to want to do it to the exclusion of all other things.
You want to be,
because every moment you're thinking about the next opportunity. You're thinking about, how can I improve my skills? What area of music aren't I very good at? What sound library do I need to get? What's my technical system? Is it good? Dave says absolutely right. We are one-man bands. We have to do everything from getting the job, to steering the job, to supervising the job, to then writing a piece of music, getting it arranged, recorded, produced, delivered, all of those things. And, we're set against an incredibly difficult competitive background. And actually the important thing is knowing that you're not in the music industry, you're in the TV and media industry. So knowing about which production companies are making things, who's the director of this channel, who's commissioning what, which channels are doing well, those sort of things.
Wow.
People ask me about the music industry also. I know nothing about music. I couldn't tell you anything about Apple or EMI or any of those things, because I'm not.
The thing, for ages, I didn't. People used to say to me, "You're a composer," and I go, "What do you mean? I'm a composer?" No, I work in telly. I just thought I was the bloke who worked in TV that wrote music for TV. I didn't think of myself as being a composer. That was exactly the right thing. It's just being in that culture is really important. Understanding the media culture, the TV culture, the film culture is a massive part of being able to do it.
Did we all have music lessons as children?
No.
Did we have music at school though?
Oh, see what?
Yeah, but it was very limited.
You know what? Someone was telling me it's like £125 for lessons now.
Wow.
In the schools, it's really bad. And yeah, if I had the most incredible music teacher at school. Like, and I feel that's a shame that maybe kids don't get that now.
I think
I personally, I don't make any friends by doing this, because I'm the guy that did not take music lessons seriously at all, because I couldn't read the music. I found it really difficult. I'm the guy that was like, if I could just fiddle and make a sound, and then I'd hear a sound on a Jean-Michel Jarre album and I'd be able to recreate it. And to me, that was, and the desire to want to do that because I couldn't do anything else. To me, it just, from my perspective, is 98% of it. The technical, how many flats are there in an F major chord? Yeah. It's such a tiny bit of it.
But Paul, it's having access to the instruments, though, isn't it?
So absolutely, and that's why I'm really optimistic, because access. Yeah, absolutely, because access to instruments now has never been easier. I mean, on your phone, the studio in GarageBand on your phone for free. It's like Abbey Road 20 years ago. The amount of power.
Again, that was about that is exactly right. I used to think, how do they get that sound? And you spend years trying to, doing it over and over to hone your sound, to try and get the production quality up and up and up and up. And you're still doing it now, really. It was just that constant hunger to keep improving and improving and making it better and making it sound like that sounds on there,
So I'm not down with education. I'm not sort of against it in any way, because it's fantastic. It's the silver bullet. But I would hate anybody to think, if I can't get piano lessons or music lessons, there isn't a chance for me, because that's absolutely not the case.
100% agreed. You can also do things at home and stuff. Nainita, what were you going to say?
Well, I was fortunate in that I did have music lessons at school, but I only took them up to a certain point, so sort of grade 4, grade 5 on the violin and the piano. But what my secondary school had was amazing, that we had a really good music department. And so it was full of equipment.
Yeah,
so they actually bought, I can't believe this, they bought an ECM VCS3, which cost about £20,000 now, second hand. And it was just sitting there gathering dust. They had a pot of money and they spent it. I said, well, what are you doing with this? And I looked at it and my eyes popped out of my head. And I said, can I borrow this? And I did. And I borrowed it for 2 years. I took it home.
And no one noticed.
No one asked about it. No one, you know, and I spent those 2 years just experimenting and just playing with it and twiddling all the knobs and the little pins like Battleship, you know, and that's how I learned the basics of synthesis. And then when I left secondary school, I sort of sheepishly went back and I said, I borrowed this a couple of years ago. Did you? I didn't know, but
You
thank
gave
very
it back to them? Are you insane? Any MS-PC3, you gave it back?
Well, you know, I had to, didn't I? I mean, I was honest.
That shows Nainita's good character right now.
You see, it's amazing she managed to get anywhere in this industry with that kind of morality.
I wish I hadn't, though. I regret taking it back. And, but it's that age where I mean, I was, you know, I'm virtually self-taught. Like
me, yeah.
You know, like so many. You don't. I mean, there are so many ways of climbing the mountain. You don't have to have a formal qualification in music. You know,
I never went to music college either. And I do actually sometimes worry when people go to music college. I think their expectations treat almost like the music industry like a job and that anybody can do it. And I don't, unfortunately, think there's a guarantee that you can do this as a job and make a living from it. We can all do it as a hobby and we can definitely all get enjoyment and we can all definitely do it to certain levels. But there's no guarantee you're going to get the money back, that it's like a wage. You know what I mean? But I always
it's completely arbitrary. It's completely
matter if you're not making it, if it's not your first, you know, job, it doesn't matter as long as you're getting enjoyment from it and, you know, people are appreciating your music. That really is what matters. You know what I mean, guys? So don't beat yourself up if you're not having a top 20 hit, you know what I mean? Yeah. Getting that commission just yet. But there's always hope around the door.
It's interesting seeing some of the comments coming through, actually.
Yeah.
She said Dennis says he lived at Heathrow and he was a T-boy at Denmark Street, and then he didn't follow it up because his van broke down.
Guys, I'd love to just get in on a couple of the shows. I mean, you know, the awards that just between you guys that you've won is absolutely outstanding. I mean, and also I see that most of you have worked on royal things as well, which is very British. But Nainita, I mean, is it Sama?
For Sama.
Sorry.
For Sama, yes.
Yes. And I mean, Hackers, Angelina Jolie, Anthony Hopkins, August, you've worked on some films and stuff. I mean, it's like your discography, and Human Planet, by the way, is amazing. But if you were going to pick one to talk about, is there one in specific that you really feel passionate about?
Well, I guess For Sama, which is my most recent, one of my most recent productions. It was a 1-hour documentary that was never meant to be anything but a 1-hour doc for Channel 4, and I worked on it for a year and a half at the end of the day.
Oh wow!
So it just escalated and became this monster of a production, and it's the most astonishing film I've ever worked on because it's about the Syrian uprising, and it's filmed by a young woman who's never made a film before in her life. She had a handheld camera and her mobile phone, her smartphone, and she shot over 500 hours worth of footage on her phone, documenting everything that was going on around her during the Syrian uprising, which was a really tough period of time, you know. And so Channel 4 took this footage and they started showing it on Channel 4 News, and it was getting millions of hits, okay, on the Channel 4 News website. And so they decided to make a film about her, documenting, talking and taking us through her journey. And she's only 21 years old at the time, and she filmed for 5 years. So I got brought on to score this doc, and what's interesting about the music on the film is that it's very minimalist. And the original brief was to start off as a very big, rich Hollywood symphonic sound, big orchestral score. And the footage is really harrowing and dark, and it's full of the horrors and the atrocities and the pathos, and it's a very emotional film as well. and so as the edit progressed over a year and a half, I think I scored it 3 times in different ways with different styles. And it ended up, we kept taking the music out and stripping the music back. And it took a long time to get, we had to go through that process to get to the end result, to end up with a really minimalist score, because where you don't have music, silence is as important as where you do have music in a film, in all films actually, and particularly with documentaries with such sensitive subject matters, that you don't want to over manipulate your audience with over emotive big strings, you know, when someone's dying, and so less is more. And,
footage of that. I haven't seen it. I would love to see it. How does everybody get to see this?
It's on the well, it won a BAFTA, it got nominated for an Oscar, and it won loads of awards last year and did the film festival circuit. But it's now, you can watch it for free on the Channel 4 OD, I think, on the Channel 4's website. So
there you go, everybody. Check that out.
Yeah.
When you were picking sounds for it, Nainita, what was inspiring your choice of instruments?
Well, what's really important for me on any project that I score is authenticity and being true to the story and to the location or the story or whatever I'm trying to empathize with on screen. So with this one, because it's set in Syria, I actually found what made this film unique musically is that I found a Syrian violinist who's also a refugee, who's living in Italy at the time. I think he now lives in Amsterdam and Italy. And he went through that whole process. So he played the violin on the score, but I didn't want a clean, pure classical violin. I wanted his emotion and his story and his history to come through. So he played the Syrian violin, which has a very gritty, edgy, dirty a sound that's not pure, you know, and it's that sort of filled with edginess and roughness and rawness that really echoes the environment, you know, the crumbling city of Aleppo all around you. So they really complemented one another. So, you know, it's like I'm just finished another film, The Reason I Jumped, which is going to be released in cinemas in the UK later this year at some point, who knows, you know, and that, you know, every score I write is very, very immersive and true to the story. So I find, so the film I just scored, the feature, is about non-verbal autism. It's quite a heavy-going subject. And because it's about autism, I actually found this amazing cellist. Her name is Elizabeth Wicklander, and she plays for the London Philharmonic Orchestra, and she's autistic herself. And she's the national ambassador, creative national ambassador for autism in the UK. And she's this incredible classical cellist. So she came to my studio and she played, and I was showing her some scenes on the film, and she said, and she started crying. I thought, is the music that bad? You know, and she said, no, Nainita. She said, the music's fine. But she said, everything that I see, that I'm watching in the film, I feel it. I've been there. I've experienced it. And so her contribution was so emotive and just wonderful, you know, in terms of that authenticity, where I like to work with musicians and contributors who actually have an empathy and a true understanding of the experience of the film and you know, the story that I'm trying to tell with the music.
I think that's absolutely fantastic that you have done your research almost and brought these people in and given them these opportunities. And I wouldn't have myself have thought to do something like that. So it shows you, when you have a project and you really actually can get a bit more creative in the ways that you're actually doing things and just not go the normal direct route.
Yeah. I mean, that's my way into a project. You know, it's like having a blank slate and getting writer's block. You know, my way is to do research and immerse myself in the story and the characters or whatever subject that I'm writing for, and find a way in that way through that sort of immersive musical storytelling.
Absolutely brilliant, Nainita. I love it. Paul, are you the same? I bet you're not, are you?
Same as Nainita.
Let's bring up some of your
If only I had the hair.
Let me
I will echo, by the way, I will echo something that she said about the idea of music when you don't use it. I use this example a lot, but it's absolutely true. The idea, it's all about the spaces in between. The most famous example, which most people don't really realize, is of course Jaws, which celebrates its 45th anniversary. So every time for the first hour, whenever there's shark action, you see it from the perspective of the shark. You never see the shark. It's just you can hear it. Iconic tune. Exactly an hour into the film, Roy Schneider's on the back of the boat. The camera's above him, and literally the shark just appears with its mouth open out of the water and goes back down again. Now, and there's no music there, and it's absolutely beautiful because the whole point of that is every time sharkiness is going to happen, you get this, oh, it's bad to happen, it's from the perspective of shark, blah blah blah. So any other lesser composer and director combination, let's have the money shot, the shark coming out of the water, it would be da da da, the whole kitchen sink. But he didn't, just complete silence. It just silently opens his mouth and silently goes, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's all about when not to do it and what not to do.
Yeah, it's really good. And less is more. Less is more is a really big, especially with music in the background. Less is more is definitely
again, because we're all little private businesses and we're all terrified of clients saying, get off, you're fired, you're rubbish. We all have this innate sense of I've got to over deliver, I've got to put more stuff in, I've got to provide value for money, I could put more sounds on it, put more strings on it, I can make it bigger. But the real strength is the confidence to be able to go, actually no, this entire scene or this entire thing can be sustained with just a single note or a little rhythm or something that's just absolutely right, that connects you to the emotional subtext of what you're trying to do for that scene or that thing.
Let the track and the work breathe a bit.
Yeah, absolutely, and all that stuff. And remember that you are, obviously in this game you're a supporting actor. You're as important as the guy who picks the color of Philip Schofield's tie, and the idea that you are, that you're the musician and here's a piece of music. Of course, music's important, but everything is important. The person who does the catering is important. It's all about fitting into an innate, complicated machine with all these different moving parts, of which you are an important part. But so is the 5 guys doing the scripts, feeding Anton Deck the things in his ear. It's all part of a massive machine. It's a fascinating machine to see, and it's an honor to be asked to be part of that machine. But the idea that you are, this is not a job for people who have any kind of on-stage ego that they need to get out, because you are, you are just one of many contributors.
Yeah, it works. I love that. I really do love that. I mean, because I'm obviously a songwriter, so I like the backstage. I like the behind the scenes myself. I don't favour the other side of it. So you have to be a team player.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Paul, let's just come on, Paul. This list is ridiculous. McIntyre, Big Show, The Chase. The Chaser. Oh my God, Dancing on Ice, Weakest Link. And I saw The Krypton Factor.
That's mine, yeah.
I used to love that show.
But yeah, for me, The Chase is obviously a big thing at the moment, which is lovely. And talking about how that came about, I guess you want to use that as a little case study. Yeah, it is entirely one of those things where these ideas never start, as Nini said about the wonderful Fasami, they never start. No big idea walks into the room and goes, this is huge.
Wait 1 second. Can I stop you just for a second? How can you explain us through this process from the minute, right? So what happens? An email comes in and they say, we've got a show. Yeah. Then is there nothing to work on? Is there just work?
No. So how did I get the job? So always, you get the show from another show that you did from another show. So I worked on an Anton Deck show with a producer who then got onto a little pilot for ITV. It's exactly the same as Weakest Link happened. It was just a tiny little pilot for daytime TV, and these things, they're always small. They're always starting really small, and you have to throw all the money at the wall and all the effort you can before they even get to the pilot stage.
There's a video. There was a video.
Not always. No, with Weakest Link, I never saw a frame of it until it was on TV, because the music had to be finished before they could film every episode, because there's tons of music in it, and it's all discrete little chunks, almost like an opera. So they need a 3-second bit for the camera to do that. They need a bit for that. They need a bit for that. So, and obviously it all has to be kind of planned like a set of scaffolding before they can film it, because it's all shown in there. And the same with The Chase. Most of the music there is played in. So you don't have an idea what it is. So you're very much talking in just abstract adjectives, or something it's trying to get the initial tone, or it's too fun, it's not sparkly enough, we need a bit more threat, we need a bit more this. So very often you've just got this backwards and forwards, just trying to nail the tone. And then once you've got the tone of, what are we using here? What instrumentation is it? What are we trying to say? Who's the audience? Who are we appealing to? What time of day is it on? All those factors. And then from there, once that's sort of over the line, if you like, then the real work starts, because then you have to create, certainly in a show like The Chase, it's, it's a musical, whatever it is. It's all the beds, it's all the ambient stuff, it's the sound design for the buttons, the buzzers, all the little sort of swipes and moments of the guy walking in, this doing that, him turning the podium. All of these things are, there's probably, I don't know, 70 or 80 different individual cues in each episode, and all of that is, you know, very, very meticulously timed to what they're, you know, operatically planning the show. So, you know, coming up with the tune is a tiny bit of it. It's a fraction of it. Yes, and obviously that informs everything that happens. But it's then, okay, what do we do with that? How do we manipulate that? How do we work with that? How do we structure that to make it, you know? And obviously instrumentation. So in that one, I used a real orchestra, but the production didn't want a real orchestra because they quite liked all the samples that I was using, and I had to try and tell them that it's going to be so much better if you let me use an orchestra. And they were like, well, it sounds great as it is. And I was like, you know what, just forget it. I'll pay for the orchestra, and then, you know, we'll worry about that later. And they did, and as soon as I did it, they went, oh wow, that's so much better. Just horrible. But yeah, it is. And the other thing, of course, with all of this, certainly in my area, perhaps less so at sort of the upper level of film or big dramas, is that you are a really specialist niche service, and the people you are pitching to, your clients as it were, are often people who know literally nothing about music. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the idea that they're sitting there sort of having conversations about, you know, oh, can we have that C minor 6? Can we have it as something else? Those hardly ever happen. Most of it, they talk in very sort of broad terms about emotions. They'll talk in colors. They'll say, you know, we quite like that piece of music, but, you know, it needs to be a bit funner, or it needs to be a bit more, you know. So actually a lot of what...
kind of speak with emotions more than...
Yeah. A lot of what we do is to be able to translate kind of normal person speaking just in very broad, non-technical terms into, oh, you know, what do they mean? In a perfect example being, you know, can you make it faster? 9 times out of 10 doesn't actually mean they just want it faster. They mean it's lacking something, you know, more rhythm, more bass, more action, something, which you could actually achieve often by slowing the track down. And you send it back to them. Oh yeah, that's much better. So it's that kind of stuff.
Takes a while to get the hang of, and the interesting thing about it is that we've all got the hang of it individually, and there's nobody's trained us to do this, but we all do it in the same way. So we've gone on our individual paths, and like I said earlier on before we logged in, it took about 10 years before I actually got to meet another composer doing what I did. And you sort of learn on your own, but it's fascinating when you listen to Paul and Nainita that we've all followed the same course, and we've all learnt the same thing, and and what we have to do is the same for everyone. You know, it's fascinating, really.
David, now you're speaking. Let's highlight some of your amazing work. BBC News, Cash in the Attic, which I kind of quite Country File, Panorama, X Factor Celebrity, Grand Designs. I mean, and you do games as well. I mean, wow. Is there one in specific you would like to talk about that to explain how the story went?
I mean, I suppose the BBC News is the biggest one, but I mean, and I suppose it took really to get to the point of actually being asked to do that. Took 17 years from when I wrote my first bit of music, so it was a very long, you know, sort of build. And
so it's not an instant. We're not just going to wait and get a big project.
It was 10 years of sort of writing music part-time, hoping that it might take off, but not chancing it. And then eventually enough work was coming in to go full-time, and then another 7 years after that before my sort of reputation was big enough to even be considered to be asked to do it, you know. And so it's a long, steady climb. And basically the brief was that they wanted to completely change radically what they'd got before, which was all these big orchestral things that George Fenton actually did. I sort of swiped his gig a bit, but he did really big, really complex, really beautiful orchestral, you know, pieces. And but each show had its own sort of specific theme, and it was all a bit disjointed. And then they decided that they wanted to brand the BBC News as one, with one look and one sound. And the brief was to find a distinctive, like really instantly recognizable sound, which would become sort of like an icon that everybody would recognize straight away. So it's a bit like you know, sort of the visual icon of the London Underground sign, or the big Mac logo, the double M, you know, you look at that and it's, you know, instantly what it is, and what you're trying to achieve with musical idents is the same thing, that as soon as you hear it, you know what it is, and it can be changed in different forms. So if you saw basically like the yellow strip of the Big Mac sign and a bit of red, you'd know that it was Big Mac, even though you didn't see the whole logo. So and it's the same idea with musical idents. You find a sound that you can manipulate and use, but it's still recognizable. And so that was the brief, and it was also to come up with something that wiped the slate clean with news music that nobody had ever done before, sort of thing, that was a completely new and different sound.
I think you did that very well. It's a truly iconic piece. It's wonderful.
Well, I mean, in a funny sort of way, it was like accumulation, really, of like the childhood passion of wanting to work for the BBC and then work in telly. And so in a way, it was like creating, subconsciously, I was trying to create what I thought the BBC should sound like. You know, if the BBC sounded like something, this would be it, sort of thing. And the Pips, sort of, we started talking about various iconic sounds around, or sounds that you instantly heard, and the Pips was mentioned, and I thought, oh gosh, maybe we could use the Pips and put it to a dance beat, you know, because it's all about time and accuracy and reliability. That was part of the brief as well. So literally, that was the idea buzzing in my head, and I only really had a couple of days to do the demo. Well, there was a demo, and then I got the job, sort of thing, and then I went for another meeting.
Sorry, did they like your first idea, or did you?
This was the first idea. But luckily, he said, he said that he wasn't going to judge the job on getting the first idea. He said it's basically more about meeting the right person and feeling like somebody that they could work with. It was more like a job interview in a way. So because they understood that the process can take a bit of time to evolve. Like Paul was saying, the toing and froing to get the tone right, to get everything right, can take a bit of evolution. So it was more for him about finding the right person that he felt comfortable with. And luckily, that was me. Whoa. So I got the call a couple of weeks later, thinking that I'd sent the demo in, thinking, oh no, this is terrible. Sounded like regional, sort of like, it sounds like a sort of morning, hello, welcome to Good Morning. And and they said, oh no, that was completely wrong, but let's start again. And then, you know, we talked about sounds, and that's when I started thinking about the Pips and things. So I came out of the meeting thinking, getting the Pips and adding the dance beat to it, and then building that up as it goes. And then I started thinking about sort of the bass line, because it's all the elements, you know, it's bass, drums, top line, whatever. In fact, somebody was asking about where do you pick up the skills to know what orchestral skills, and it's just a sort of, it's all the layers. There's certain layers. So the next layer was the bass line, and I was thinking, ooh, and I started thinking world bass, you know, doom chat chat doom chat chat doom chat. What's that groove called? And that's the sort of like a sort of that was a groove. Sort of it's almost like reggaeton sort of feel. It's Indian, and you hear it a lot in Indian music. Boom, tak tak dung tak tak dung tak.
Boogly 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 boogly.
And then South America. So I sort of started adding that to it as I went along. I was thinking, oh, that's nice, because it adds a little bit of a world flavour. And then some big drums to sort of give it some drama, and then of course with getting the right tone. We're saying, because music's so emotional, it's like any slight chord change can change your whole perception of what you're receiving the music as. So with the news, obviously you can't be it's got to be fairly neutral. So I ended up just thinking 2 chords, minor to major. And this is a little trick that Mr. Farrer taught me years ago about using strings, because I thought it'd be nice to add some strings, you know, string chords to give the gravitas of the BBC, and to give that thing. And what this chap was earlier on, where was he said about, you know, how do you, it was Kevin said the musical skills. Well, one trick that Paul told me, and you don't remember this, but when you're doing string chords, because you know when you're playing the piano, you can play sort of triad chords, which are this sort of so that's a triad. So but if you're doing it on strings, you spread it across the keyboard. So you sort of you spread the whole thing across. So it's like your bass, your middle, and so when you're doing strings, you're better off spreading it over the keyboard like that. Do you remember?
Does this mean I'm owed some of your POS?
So then I added the string chords using that particular. So yeah, string chords minor to major. So there we go. So and it just pedals on the same note, like the pip stays on the B flat, and then the chords change underneath it.
Can I just say, one of the lovely things about it is it has a major chord. Now, news music traditionally never has major chords. It's all minors and suspensions. I just love the fact that it's really optimistic.
Well, actually, what it was, it sort of starts being a bit like anxious with the minor chord, and then it changes to optimistic. So all within 7 seconds. So
note those two chords. They'd actually make a really nice dance song.
Yeah. Well, it actually, they've been doing it. Dua Lipa. There's some guy did a Dua Lipa remix of it.
Oh, yeah, I heard that. That was really great.
Which was absolutely stunning.
David, you came so prepared.
It went viral.
Bad. You didn't have your music ready.
I know. It's good, isn't it?
So sad. So guys, I mean, these are just incredible stories that I know are going to inspire the watchers. But obviously, this is a very isolated business. So if you're in this isolated business and you don't know how to meet people to get these contacts, I mean, we've all stumbled across people in our careers. But obviously, we're in lockdown at the moment. So is there any advice that you'd give to everybody, like how they possibly can meet people and maybe try and lift their careers a bit?
Join the Ivors Academy.
Join the Ivors.
Actually, and I'm not just saying that because we are Ivors Academy. Actually, they do some brilliant events, don't they?
It's also, I mean, it's really hard to meet people who want music, like producers. I mean, it's really hard to get to meet people like that. But the next best thing is just meeting people that is like us that are doing it. And so you get a bit of a moral, you feel like you're part of you don't feel so isolated. You feel you're part of a community, and there's a sort of toing and froing of advice, and
the other great thing, of course, about this sort of thing. Sorry, the other great thing is that there are numerous battles that we're continually fighting, mostly with regards to the value of our copyright, the value of our music, all sorts of horrible internet things trying to steal copyright, not pay people properly, all sorts of people trying to rip off your publishing. It never ends. Because we are completely isolated, largely as an industry, it's really good to talk to other people, not just to get perspectives, to know that you're all in the same boat and that you're not alone, and everything that you're encountering is the same problem as everyone else. But it allows us to actually club together to put our foot down and draw lines in the sand with regards to legislation, which a lot of what the Ivors do is actually influence governments and say, this is what we think is really important. We've got all sorts of fights going on. And the more of us that there are to add our voice to those fights, the stronger the position for all music creators across Britain and Europe.
I think in a way we're less isolated as well than we used to be, because with the internet and social media and all that, you can be in touch with people all day, every day now. Whereas when we started, literally we just sat in that little studio on our own, not knowing anybody, apart from the person that was phoning you up saying if they liked it or not. And so I suppose you get used to that. That's just one of the things you have to get used to as a media composer, as a songwriter, as an artist, really, just working on your own, is part. I think
even as you need new people though getting into the business. If you've got a contract coming up and you're unsure, it's your first gig. Coming to a community that has knowledge, you can be a little bit protected. It's like a safety net, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Just to echo, I mean, Paul and David have said it so well that you need a sense of what the Ivors Academy does, and for me in particular, is that you creates a sense of community. With all the, we're all fighting the good fight and so on. But I mean, in terms of actually meeting the people that are going to employ us in the film and TV industry. You know, for years, I thought all I had to do was write good music and enhance those technical and creative and musical skills. And because music is music for film and TV is a lifelong learning profession. You never stop learning and being curious. And but I thought all I had to do was write good music and the work would come my way, and it doesn't. And so I spend half my time actually out there meeting people, networking, and there's so many.
Very important.
Yeah, in film and TV industry, you know, it's so important. I go to film festivals a lot, and I do a lot of traveling, you know, and I do like to, because it is a solitary profession, you're stuck in the studio a lot of the time. I do like to get out and see the real world and go out, and instead of, you know, I have clients in lots of different countries, lots of different cities. So it's any excuse to get out of the studio and meet the directors I'm working with and the editors and the producers, and go to film conferences, go to film festivals where you just broaden your base. And
do you think it's a good idea, like for new creatives trying to break into the industry, to maybe try and team up with new filmmakers? Maybe they could do like almost like a deal where you go, okay, you don't pay me now, but if you get something, have it written down on a piece of paper and sign it. Because I mean, that might be a way to kind of.
I was saying that to a student the other day, that there's no point in trying to get the people that are working in the industry now, like are making shows, have been in it for 15 years, so they're like, or 20 years like us. You know, we're at the peak of where it's all happening now is people that have got to this point from about 20 years ago. So if you're starting out as a student, you're at the beginning of that sort of next wave. So instead of trying to get into this wave, which is already gone, you're better off trying to sort of team up with people in your, you know, age range and who are doing different things, and sort of just network with loads of people coming out of uni doing film studies. Get to know.
I never had further or higher education, but I tell everyone, if I had, the absolute most valuable lesson you could do is not go to any lessons at all while you're there. Go down to the editing suites, meet the people who are editing films or making little videos or all that sort of stuff. Stick your head through the door and say, do you need any music? Because that is where those people that are going to start there and move up through, those are the people that are the relationships that you're going to build that are going to go on, you know, through to careers. That's exactly that's where that new stuff, those interesting, rich new talent is coming from. And again, every good project that's ever come our way, I'm sure this is true for everyone, never announces itself as being good or big or important. It's always this tiny little project that was just funny and you did it, and then suddenly it's caught, and then it's that. That's how it is. That's why this kind of industry or this bit of the industry kind of demands you to be a little bit humble and accepting of crazy little things that are just like, oh, that's interesting, and there's no money in it, but it's kind of a mate and I quite like it, it tickles me, therefore, you know, those kind of things can end up changing your life and making a difference.
You know, the first film I scored, short films are a great way in. You know, there's so many film schools, film departments, working your way up as a music student, or even if you're not, you know, as Paul said, if you haven't studied music, getting in with young film directors who are learning their craft, getting their way up in the industry. The first short film I ever did, I got paid 50 quid for it, and it got nominated for an Oscar. You know, that's just, you can't beat that. That's the biggest calling card you can have. And so, you know, just working your way up, as David said, you know, you've got to work with young up and coming filmmakers, because they're going to be the Spielbergs or the big directors of tomorrow. That's your way up.
Okay, I got a question for you all. If you go to an event, or you're lucky enough to get a really amazing contact, like you did, what do you do when you contact them? Do you inundate them with music? Do you give them different styles? Do you give them one song? How do you think is the best way to handle that situation?
I would be honest with them. I'd say, if I was starting my career, I'd say, I'm starting my career. I haven't got a massive amount of experience, but I'm really committed to this. Tell me your story. Tell me what you're doing. Tell it to me. Pitch it to me. Make me want to be as part of it as you are. And I always say, you know, if you can establish an element of trust, I think this is the same whether it's the guy who's plastering your bathroom or whether it's a big film and TV project. the idea that, you know, look, I want to, if you trust me, I will give you 110%. I want to throw myself at it. I want to, you know, I want to get inside your head and make the noises that you think should be up on the screen. And just that kind of, that personal relationship of just being the person that is the least complicated of their worries. Because if you can imagine, and I know a lot of TV and film directors, the amount of money these things cost and the risk, and everyone's career is on it, and all of this stuff has to happen before a single frame of it has been on TV. The amount of creative decisions that they have to do, from who the biscuits are wrong and we haven't got the lighting hasn't turned up, all that sort of thing. You need to be the absolutely least complicated part of the process.
Easy, the experience easy.
You make it easy for them. Just like, oh, you want a piece of music by Saturday? Let me give you 4 pieces of music by Thursday. You know, what about that? Okay, let's try it this way. Oh, you didn't like it? It's all crap. Great, let's try again. Let's get it right. That is absolutely what this industry is about. The moment that you become, well, you know, I've spent 3 days making this and it's the best piece of music I've got. This is a crap demo that I just put in as well, just to make that one look even better. And they picked the crap demo. The number of times that happens, it wouldn't make this up. There's no correlation between how important you think your work is, how much effort you put into it, and whether or not anyone actually gets it or what it means. They're totally arbitrary. So the only way you can approach it is with a total kind of openness, saying, look, I'm just happy to be here. I want to be part of this story that you're trying to tell, or this thing you're trying to do. Take me on your journey.
Yeah. I think also I would like to mention at this point that someone who's actually now a friend, but they were at the BBC networking event that I was at, and they left early because they didn't feel they could approach people. And I said to them, "Well, did you actually try to speak to anyone?" They were like, "Well, no." And I was like, "Well, why didn't you? Why didn't you just walk over and go hi?" And I think that's something really important. Be brave, put a nice smile on your face, be personable. You know, and say hi to people. And you know, if they rebuke you, it's okay. Don't worry. Move on to the next person. But you know, give it a try.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're there to network as well, as much as you are. You know, that's why it's called a networking event. So you know, I think, you know, I used to be the shy wallflower on the room because I like to sit in the studio and be in the background, you know, and write music all day. But actually, I need to put food on the table. I need to buy cat food, you know. So you just have to go for it. It's, you know, developing your communication skills and your networking skills is as important as developing your musical skills.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of, you know, from their point of view, it's feeling comfortable with the person that they're working with, you know, and it's even harder now because everything's so remote. So they, you know, a lot of communications by email, but you often find that you can sort something out in like 30 seconds when they're sitting next to you and you're with your keyboard, you know, stuff that might take days of emails toing and froing it. And it's just about the vibe that you've got together, because you sort of understand a person without them even saying anything. It sort of, when you meet them, and it gives you a sort of feeling of, you sort of understand what they're going to like, and it's hard to explain, but
also, the other thing is that music is a dark art. It's one of the really things that people kind of think is a bit sort of weird. And I think a lot of people think that composers are very pretentious. They have this idea of this sort of Beethoven figure wandering around the forest with the pencils. I know you are. But the idea of making yourself really approachable, and that actually, yes, you are making music, but there's nothing sacred about that. Making music is like making sausages. You know, there are really good ones, there are bad ones, there are some you like, there are some you don't. You know, it's the idea of being... you know, just this easygoing kind of guy that you spend time on, and if you didn't like that, let's try something else. They love that, because obviously, you know, if I had to talk to a sculptor, I'd be terrified of putting my foot in or embarrassing myself or saying all the horrible cliches that make them do. And what you want is, you want a guy who says, yeah, tell me what you like. What are you after? You know, you want that relationship of being able to be easy. As I say, the key is the communication. To be able
Guys, I can't believe it. We've only got 1 minute left. I told you it'd go fast, didn't I? Paul, I must tell you, if not, well, I probably won't have time to tell you now, but remind me to tell you about Bradley Walsh and your theme tune. Because I was on the Takeoff show. I ended up, because you know I sang the theme for it. Yeah. I ended up being one of the singers in one of the bands for one of the episodes. And he was telling this story just to the audience as a joke, and it involved your theme tune. And Pointless. It's very funny. So anyway, I will tell you that afterwards.
Okay.
Guys,
see me after.
Last minute advice. Any words of wisdom?
Enjoy it.
Don't give up. Keep going.
Don't give up.
Have fun.
Keep going.
Tenacity, perseverance.
Yeah.
Is the key to success.
Yeah.
David?
Same here. Keep going, keep driving. But if you enjoy it, that'll be easy. You just want to do that anyway. So,
Paul?
Danny Kahn, the great 20th century songwriter who wrote all the greatest songs of the 20th century, said, "People often ask me which comes first, the music or the lyrics. Neither. The phone call comes first."
That's very cool. Okay, very quick other last question. Best piece of equipment or plug-in to have for your system right now to help inspire?
My microphone. My Neumann U87, get it out, use it, and record stuff on it. And that's what'll make you stand out from every other composer out there and every other sound library that you can buy. Everyone's got the same gear, but they haven't got what you can record with your mic.
I have to say, Nainita, by the way, very quickly, every time I see your wall with those instruments, I just literally want to come in your studio and have a little play. Even though it'd be not very fun, but I just would probably wouldn't
You're
sound
welcome. I can't play any of them.
I would just love to have a little just jam. David, what about you for the studio gear?
I mean, I agree with Nainita. The best, it's obviously your brain and ideas are the best. You can make something that people like on a couple of tin cans. If it was right, it'd be right. But in terms of, like, I suppose studio gear, for instance, mastering, I'd say Isotope. Just if you. I didn't even get into mastering until about 3 or 4 years ago. I didn't realize you had to do it, sort of thing. And that's, so after all that time in the business, I only literally started mastering stuff quite recently. But with TV, you can't, they want it, so because there's so little time, you might master it and then they want to change it again. So it's good to have something that will achieve, make it sound crisp and clear and good and the right levels and everything. So I quite like the old Isotope mastering thing.
Brilliant, that's handy to know. I wouldn't mind checking that out myself. What about you, Paul?
Single most valuable piece of technology in my studio is the mono button. Just because we have huge speakers, we have huge sounds, we have everything sounds wonderful. You switch it on, preset number 1 is amazing. Push it into mono, send it through a couple of really crappy little iPod speakers, and then you'll hear what it's actually going to sound like to 80% of the people that are ever going to hear your work.
Yeah, that's it.
And to me, it's just valuable. It's just that whole world of thinking, okay, I can make it sound good in here, but that's not how people consume television in here. It's where the chips are being cooked next door and the kids are running around and it's on a little phone. It is to me that understanding the end user and how they relate to your work, and mono is a good example.
Guys, this has been absolutely brilliant. Nainita, I wanted to touch on being a female as well in the business, because I know that's probably come with its challenges, but we'll probably have to do that for another day.
Another time.
But thank you so much, guys. Thank you. And to everyone watching in the future, good luck.
Hey, see you soon, guys. Join the Ivors.